Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Thank you for tuning into another Supatease video, and we are on the Midnight Alpha. We are getting a first look at the Balanced Druid rework in today's video. Obviously, this has been my main specialization for years. I think it's been decades now, at least one decade of playing this specialization. So obviously, it's like close to my heart. I'm obviously very interested in knowing what its future is going to be. And obviously the entire game is just shifting under our feet. A lot of specializations and players of those specializations feel like their spec is getting completely gutted. They're losing everything. They have like a 2-button rotation. So I was looking at that and like, oh no, what's that going to mean for Moonkin? Like what's going to be happening there? But fortunately, my first assessment is that things just look all right. So we're going to be doing a deep dive into the talents, deep dive into the potential rotation changes, little look at some of the new talents and goodies that we're going to be getting, as well as some of the baseline UI improvements that they've been implementing, because that's another massive concern I've seen from the player base, is that the sky is falling if they remove add-ons and that they won't be able to play the game anymore. I'm kind of on the side of the fence that they need to do something really big with this expansion, basically WoW 3. I think for a lot of people, they consider WoW 1, classic. I would say debatably up until Legion, and in Legion we saw massive class reworks, and now Legion was WoW 2 up until possibly Midnight, which is going to see massive class reworks again. And Legion ultimately was a great expansion, and we saw a ton of pruning in that expansion, reduction, simplicity, and the like. Obviously, I think the story was carrying it a lot, but it may not be the worst thing to just do a complete reset. We're starting from the ground, discovering the game new. We're all in an even playing field, and we're coming together, because I don't think that they're intending on making these changes so that suddenly you're not able to perform at the same level that you were before. I think their goal is that performance stays about the same, except that new players, when they join the game, don't need to be going onto third-party websites and basically know how to code in order to set up their UI, in order to deal with some of the mechanics that the arms race of add-ons versus developers has sort of created. Those are my initial first thoughts, is that don't jump the gun too soon, because this is still very early alpha. A lot of stuff is not even working properly yet, so take it with a grain of salt. So the first thing you're going to notice is that there's a new health bar, and that health bar can have dots on it. Now, this health bar is also customizable in the options, which you probably are going to want to do. It's in the nameplate section, and you scroll down to the bottom. So you can make it really big. That's probably a little too big, but you know what? It's better to be safe than sorry, I guess, with things. If you really want those big health bars, size is not all that matters. I found that the 2 was about 2 or 3 was probably about good for me. I don't know how many of you guys feel like your eyesight's getting worse as you're getting older or something, or if that's something genetic that I should maybe be concerned about and contact my doctor. But you can make it as big as you need, and you can see the little dots appearing above it with the timer on them that track them. So I was very happy with that. I think it also shows crowd control. I don't know if I can root this training dummy. Oh, it doesn't show crowd control. I don't know. Maybe it's not updated for routes. Can I cycle? I doubt that I can cycle on it, but before it was showing crowd control on the right side of the health bar. So I'm wondering if maybe that's just because it's a training dummy or something, but there's definitely something they should look at if it's not showing entangling routes up here on the crowd control. Because for me, like, big debuffs is a really big deal. Being able to see crowd control next to the health bar, because I play most of the game like looking at the health bars of targets, so getting my dot information, getting their cooldown information, which maybe shows up there, seeing if they're in crowd control, all that stuff happens from this. So this is like a very important component to me, in order for the viability of Moonkin in this expansion. Basically, initially I think this is good, but obviously there's gonna have to be a little bit more added to it, and you can see that it'll likely show some of the cooldowns that they've got. You can increase the buff size as well if you want, change the fonts, fully customizable. And they have said that add-ons will be enabled as far as like UI visual changes. It's just combat related add-ons, so mostly weak auras, cooldown trackers, and things like that. So even if you just hate the aesthetic of this, which is honestly pretty customizable just within this frame, you're probably going to be able to get an add-on to be able to do all that. You don't got to worry about that, right? Now, first thing you'll notice as far as big changes is that they have pruned some abilities for Moonkin. The first big one being renewal. We now instead have Acena's renewal, which is just a passive. So if you're hit for more than 12% of your health, you will heal for 10% of your health. It can only occur every 30 seconds. So you're going to be a little more durable to consistent damage, but you're also not going to be able to control when you heal. That's the trade-off, right? So in whether it's dungeons or PvP, if there's a big hit of damage, you won't be able to have a time to hit that and be able to recover immediately if you need to. It's just going to be more kind of constant ongoing healing. The first proc is probably in a lot of cases not going to provide too much value, as most times people are over healing, but we don't know how the pace of the game is going to be. They have said that their goal is to remove one shots. So if one shots aren't an issue, it may not be as big of a deal that you can't time your renewal, because your health is just going to slowly chip down. And then this would likely get probably more value because it's every 30 seconds as opposed to every 2 minutes, I believe, on renewal. Renewal might be a little lower now. I don't know. They've moved that around a bit, but this could end up having better value than renewal. And now we don't have the keybind, so it's a little bit easier to play because it's just, you're just going to be healing yourself, right? And passive healing mechanics are generally very strong. This one's certainly not as good as like the Fury Warrior healing stuff that I've seen, but it wasn't completely uncompensated. They did shift some talents around as well towards the bottom. You're able to get a lot more high value stuff within the Druid tree. Honestly, it wasn't like totally disturbed like I've seen some of the class trees thus far. On the Boomkin side of things, you'll see that there is an Apex talent tree, which is the Ascendant Eclipses, which maybe I should bring up right now, which is this button here. They've basically made it so that you can activate Eclipse whenever you want. So rather than going Wrath, now we're in Lunar Eclipse, you can just press the Eclipse button and you're in Eclipse, and then you can spam Star Surge. So they've said in their breakdown of the class that they basically want you to be applying dots outside of Eclipse and building up your astral power outside of Eclipse. And then when you're ready, that's when you're going to press Eclipse and then unload all of your Star Surges. So to me, it basically functions like an Incarn button almost, right? Like it's going to put you in Eclipse, buff your damage depending on if you've picked Lunar or if you picked Solar. And Incarn is very similar, except it activates both of them at the same time. So this makes it easy to just like immediately ramp on a target and just start going ham on it right away. Like you can just you just get your dots up, you can just go ham on it. It gives you just a lot more on-demand damage right away. So initially it's going to be perceived as a buff. It's also an extra keybind, but I'm probably just going to be slapping that on my renewal keybind anyways. So I don't think it's going to be a huge deal as far as keybind bloat, mostly because they did take the renewal away to begin with. But that's the change there. And Eclipse kind of gets reworked every once in a while. Every 2 expansions or so. They can't really decide 100% on how they want to lock it down. I was honestly kind of hoping for Boomkin to see more priority on dots and Starfall. It seems like we're still probably going to be in kind of like this big burst window. A lot of other classes are having their cooldowns either pruned or reworked, and they're more sustained damage. And I was honestly kind of hoping Boomkin was going to be going into that bow, but it seems like they're pretty happy with the cooldown playstyle. So ultimately, I'll probably play more or less the same, except that you'll be able to ramp really fast. Our Apex talents, Ascendant Eclipses. Activating Eclipse makes your next Wrath or Starfire instant, and the first 3 Star Surges or Starfalls that you cast during Eclipse deal 20% more damage. So Eclipse is going to be really powerful. It's also a 30-second recharge, so you get 2 of them, so you can blast through these 3 stacks. And I wasn't able to cancel Aura the Eclipse to then activate it again to like blast out another 3, because I thought that would be kind of crazy. So they kind of prevented that by not being able to cancel Aura. But that's a really powerful one. Some classes didn't get necessarily like really strong Apex talents, so that's a really strong one. Ascendant Eclipses. Your critical strikes during an Eclipse cause their victims to languish for an additional 20% of the damage dealt for 6 seconds. So I think one of the big things that I would like them to focus on with classes is stat viability. So when you look at your stats, right, a lot of classes, one of these stats usually ends up being a dead stat. You just like don't want it on any of your gear because it underperforms so massively. And that can be a really big problem, just depending on if you're not getting the right itemization from random drops, or you play multiple specs and you want to switch over. Like for Boomkin, for example, haste is generally the priority, at least in PvP. But when you want to go Resto or Feral, your Mastery is. And Mastery is just so bad for Boomkin. It's just like, it's not really viable. So my hope, this Evoker is spamming my ears with all the new disintegrates and fun buttons that they've got going off here. So I'm going to move over a little bit. This maybe makes crit a little bit more desirable to try and bring it up to where the other stats are considered, which I think is good. I think they should be doing that, especially for the hybrid classes that share healer or tank roles. Making the stats more on parity with each other is really important so that more people can multi-class tank and healer, so the queue times are shorter for any of the content in the game. So that's something I really would like them to do. This one kind of is in alignment with that, but it might not be perfect I'm kind of expecting Boomkin to be the same stat priority, just something personally that I would like applied. And then finally, Ascendant Eclipses. Activating an Eclipse will also just shoot out a Lunar and Solar Bolt at the enemy that will always critically strike. Solar Bolt, if you go into Solar Eclipse, that deals nature damage to the single target. Lunar Bolt, which is just going to launch 3 Lunar Bolts at enemies that deal 400 damage and reduce beyond 5. So one of them's AoE, one of them's single target. That's their main goal, right? The Lunar Eclipse is your AoE Eclipse. Your Solar Eclipse is your single target Eclipse. So you'll want to dictate that depending on the engagement that you're in. And that's something that you'll have to actively monitor. And honestly, that's probably more complex than what a lot of the other classes are. I'm going to try and do these reviews for as many specs as I can on the alpha, because obviously the game means a lot to me, and I've been involved with the community and been involved with the AWC for a decade now. So I would like all of these things to continue and to continue to grow. So I'm just providing as relevant feedback as I can to what I think would provide the best experience for everybody in the game when I'm making these videos and reviews. Not trying to be too hard-headed or not understanding of different perspectives to the best of my ability. But the big thing for me on this expansion is that I think we're due for an overhaul. We're due for a complete reset and to bring something fresh in where we're all starting out at ground zero. We do get some new talents like Total Eclipse. After entering Eclipse, 20% chance to grant the benefits of both Solar and Lunar. So basically, Eclipses can become Incarn. You have a little bit of an RNG chance to have your Eclipse become Incarn, which could be a lot of fun if you're doing that, if you get lucky. Personally, sometimes I don't really get that lucky. Elune's Challenge: when you exit Eclipse with less than 40 Astral Power, Wrath and Starfire's cast times are reduced by 25% for 15 seconds or until you enter the next Eclipse. So it's going to be like some rapid fire hard cast spells. I really like when the hard casted spells actually feel good to press. And I feel like we've just waved through so many different iterations of Boomkin. My expectation is we're just going to fall about where we are. But I don't. At the same time, it's hard to say because it's so early and their commitments are so large that we could end up being somewhere entirely different. But some rapid fire wraths or something could be fun if that talent ends up being viable. If the casted abilities end up being relevant as far as overall damage. Now, I was a little bit disappointed. Elune's Chosen is obviously under construction, so we can't see what the additional hero talents are going to be for this. And Elune's Chosen it's been decently competitive towards the end of the War Within. They've gotten better at bringing them closer on parity, but for the most part, people are playing Keeper of the Grove. So these 3 could completely shift that once they're created. But the ones on Keeper of the Grove are really powerful. The Sylvan Beckoning. Entering an Eclipse summons a Dryad to assist you for 8 seconds, casting Star Surge and dealing damage to the target, and Starfall at 300%. It's kind of the set bonus, which honestly, that's what I really like, is when they make a new set bonus, that's experimentation time. If that set bonus works out really well and everyone likes it, just make it a talent. Just bake it into the tree, make it baseline, because to me, the set bonuses are ways for the developers to safely experiment with something that can just get removed if it sucks or it didn't work out, or but if it ends up being really cool, you can add it into the core design of the class, and this was one of those set bonuses. And the Dryad actually looks really cool. I don't know if you guys saw it when I was attacking the dummy here, but you pop Eclipse and you just get a little water elemental basically with the Dryad, and it fits the fantasy really nicely with Keeper of the Grove as well. So I thought it was just kind of cool. You get a little extra minion. It's going to be blasting out some Star Surges. Dryad Dance. Dryads cause most of your Astral Power generation to be increased by 10% as well. So you're going to be able to refill that bar while you're in the Eclipse. And then Spirit of the Thicket. Your Starfall damage is just increased by 8%. Star Surge increased by 8%. Nothing really groundbreaking here as far as hero talents. Main benefit is that there's a slight pruning. Not nearly as cataclysmic as some of the other classes, and trust me, when we make those videos, we're gonna be laughing about that. So make sure you hit the subscribe button so if you want to stay up to date with news related to World of Warcraft, any alpha updates, and the like. And we didn't get any new PvP talents. For the most part, we've retained everything, ignoring renewal as the primary thing. The rework on Feral looks really good. Might be doing that in a very nearby video. There's a couple other classes that I'd like to get to first because I think that they definitely need like some direct attention as soon as possible. But for Boomkin, definitely not the sky is falling. Still going to be really competitive, just shoring up some of the pain points. You won't have to cast it into Eclipse, which is a really nice convenience change for that, and you just be able to blast out damage. So we're going to wait for further testing, wait for further unlocks, but that's just my initial assessment. I think that Blizzard needs to be dialing in on the specs that a lot of people are screaming that are on fire. Boomkin's not one of those. It just looks like it's going to be solid, and likely a little bit more the same, which could debatably be disappointing if you're expecting something completely groundbreaking and new. But maybe those those Elun's chosen talents, the hero talents, when they're available, we'll really know that. But I hope you guys enjoyed this deep dive, this review of the Balance Druid. Thank you guys very much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.